Hello, this is Todd Siegel, Psychic Detective, and you are listening to The Psychic Zone. Well, it's about a week before Thanksgiving, and I wish you a very good Thanksgiving if I don't talk to you before then. And I do have an announcement to make. I am actually writing a book right now. And the book mostly is about my work and what I do and what it's like to be a psychic detective. It was very hard for me to think about this book, to talk about it, to come up with an angle of what I wanted the book to be, but I was trying not to focus on myself. I wanted to focus on the work. I wanted to focus on some of the incredible stories that I've worked on for over 20 years. It's been a long time so far. And I didn't want the focus just on myself. I didn't want this to be an ego boost. I didn't want a memoir. I didn't want it to be, oh, look at what Todd can do. I didn't want that. But unfortunately, I have a pretty fascinating life story so far. And I have to put myself in this because I think that's why I do what I do. I think that's why I have abilities. And what I thought I'd do on this podcast is to actually read some passages from this book, which I've started. I always laughed about it because I said, I can't even write a personal check. How am I going to write a book? So I've used my off hours and my off time to just gather some information. I really wanted people to know that there's another side to our existence. There's a whole world out there that people are not aware of. There's more to life than paying bills and, going to the doctor, and there's a whole other side of life. I'm also going to talk about spirits and mediumship and all that. But the interesting thing that's really happened doing this is reflecting on all of the cases that I've worked on, all of the people I've worked on. This is in the thousands. So it is really just an incredible array of information and stuff over the years. So, excuse me for the little pause, but I just had to close my door there. I've got something in the background making noise. So hold on one sec. And I'm going to begin the first part of this, not from the beginning, but maybe where I left off in a paragraph, and I'll start reading from my book. After what I will talk about in this book, you might just think I landed here from another planet. Haha. I think one of the reasons I have held off about writing this book is because it has taken me a long time to understand why I have this psychic ability. I still don't have all the answers, but I understand a lot more than, let's say, 10 years ago. I remember someone once told me that I have a really cool job. I was thinking to myself, that is very far from the truth. It may seem impressive to some, but the reality is it is hard work. Not so much the work, but dealing with the public. I need things to be in order in my life. I need stress to a minimum and a lot of time to unwind. At the end of the day, I will usually watch a movie on TV or something. I lean towards action and detective movies. I will often listen to a rock song before an appointment or go outside and do a chore on my farm. People think I am spiritual because of what I do. They vision me in deep meditation, dressed in a robe before we speak. Well, sometimes I will burn a candle or incense, but I don't consider myself to have spiritual beliefs. In a positive light, I am a very deep person. Shy at times, but I am very inward. I see and feel death and terrible stuff every day. I feel what it is like being shot by a bullet and know what it is like going down in a plane on fire. I hear people's last words in their bodies, and I feel the disease they suffered with. I lead people to their missing pets, even if I know they are dead. I feel relationships going bad and know when someone will have a really hard time in this life. I see this stuff every day. Cool is not a choice of words I would use to describe my life. Sometimes I cry when I feel the pain of the suffering, especially when his child is taken and he won't know what it is like being an adult. A lot of psychics suffer mental breakdowns and physical offsets doing this kind of work. It takes a toll on us. I was a skilled carpenter and furniture maker for many years, and my attitude towards this work is similar to doing carpentry. I just do my job to the best of my abilities, but don't bring the pressure home with me. I know since I was younger, I had this ability to blank my mind out. I'm not sure where this came from, but it is kind of a detachment. I can go from one call to another, and in a matter of seconds, my mind goes blank from the last call. I don't want this book to be about me, but I guess it has to in some respect. I could have taken this career to the next level and done readings for celebrities and been on talk shows. Yes, I was on TV a couple of times, been in newspapers, magazines, and did some big videos on the internet. I'm fearful of being famous in this work. Once you are famous, the public challenges you, trying to make you look like a fraud. This has happened to quite a few psychics, good psychics, I might add. Although I feel they set themselves up to it and should have been more careful about the press. I just want to help people and animals. That is it. Are there frauds in this business? Yes. I could devote a whole chapter in this book about them, but I don't want to waste the time. They keep increasing in numbers, too. The one thing you should keep in mind while reading this is I will make jokes a lot. I use humor a lot in my life and my work. It is our best defense against disease, honestly. I often use humor when working with a new client. It helps open them up so I can read them better. One time I called this man up for his appointment, and he said to me, I just want you to know I am new at this. This is my first time. I responded back to him, this is my first time too. cool, let's see what happens. After he left, I knew we would get along well in the reading. The problem is people think I am God, even though my name rhymes with God. I am just a little mortal that likes to ride motorcycles. Most of the neighbors around me just think I am a farmer. I drive a tractor and work on my property a lot. I look the part too. I don't want to be a celebrity. I just want you to know that there's a whole big world out there that you have never seen before. The psychic world. We need a new message now for the human race. This world has become infected with propaganda from people with bad intentions. It is used to divide us. This may sound corny, but love is the answer for all of us. There is love in life and in spirit. There is greatness in what I see, and I want to share that with you. And, friends, for one moment, I'm going to take a quick break because I have to go turn something off that's driving me crazy. Hold on one sec. Okay, I am back after my short break here. Sorry about that. I had something beeping and it would not turn off. So I had to manually turn it off. It is really hard for me to explain how I do what I do. There are many people who proclaim they can teach you psychic abilities, but it really isn't something you can teach. You are either born with it or an experience in life brings it to you. Yes, you can develop it, and it is important that if you have it, you should learn how to use it properly. I had to seek out the advice from other established psychics to understand what I was dealing with and how to effectively learn how to not go crazy. I understand now that I've always had this ability since I was a little kid. I was highly sensitive as a child and did not fit into the norm. I was fearful of everything. I also saw the future for people and things. I had experienced ghosts that scared me quite a bit. I do think this can be inherited through the family tree. I can see many of my relatives who had psychic abilities. They didn't ever announce it or perhaps even acknowledge they had it, but I can see it now. It was a part of their life. I never had an interest in psychics or mediums or any kind of spirituality. I'm not religious, but I'm not an atheist either. I see things that transcend our understanding of life here on our planet. I don't think we do everything ourselves. I consider myself a nature man. I think there are many, many forces around us, not just the Supreme God. I just don't think we're in charge of this life completely. I don't proclaim to have all the answers. And the more I live, the less I understand, even with the afterlife. I do mediumship readings every day in one form or another. I do not know completely what death is all about. Even though I communicate with spirits, it doesn't give me the full picture of heaven, or what I interpret as the invisible world, as I call it. What I can say is the afterlife is real. but it is very much part of our life. It isn't separate as most people imagine it. I get customers every week that ask me to communicate with a loved one that has passed away. It is like they're asking me to call dear old grandma on the telephone and relay messages back and forth to them. It is not like that for me. I understand that all mediums work differently, or I should say, interpret the messages differently. There isn't one way to interpret it. It is like going to the beach with some friends in the summer. One friend will say, "It is so perfect and sunny and warm." The next friend will say, "She burned her feet on the sand and she will get skin cancer if she doesn't have sunblock on." Another will say, "She can't stand the crowds there." The psychic stream, as I call it, is the same, but we interpret it our own unique way. For everyone that has abilities, we also have a specialty, a strength. I found my strength in providing details for detective work. It wasn't that way at first. I had to develop it. Mediumship is not a separate ability. It all comes from the same place, or the same psychic stream. I can see, smell, hear, and even taste sometimes. I will have to admit, it does scare me at times. It completely nullifies my understanding of human abilities and what we people are capable of. I have no doubts about what I do or what I see. Yes, I can be wrong sometimes, but I do not see it as wrong. It all depends on how open the client is, and that is rather hard to explain. It doesn't mean they have to be an open-minded person. It is something deep-rooted inside of them. I can't explain it like the internet. The internet is the psychic stream. My purpose is to interpret what I see on the computer stream. The client is the Wi-Fi device. If it is faulty, it will be harder for me to see. If it relays a strong signal, it is easy for me. There is no way to gauge it. Can a person change their Wi-Fi signal? Good question. I do not think it is something that can be changed overnight, truthfully. It can take some mental work. Can I see for myself? No, it is a lot harder. It frustrates me too. I have a few psychic friends and we give each other insight about ourselves. In other words, it's somebody else I can ask about myself. The problem, I think, stems from the fact that we have a biased opinion of ourselves. We judge ourselves and don't look from neutrality. There are certain methods I've used to get an answer for myself. Sometimes I'll communicate with spirit that will help me understand. And sometimes I can be neutral enough to see the real picture. I have been asked many times if I believe in spirit guides. These are spirits around us that are like a guardian angel of sorts. Although some psychics rely on them to do their work, I do not, or do not have a close connection to any guides that I know of. I often joke about and say my guides only come out during their drinking hours or something like that. Yes, I do think they are real, but I personally think we are not what we think we are. We are not just a living, breathing body here on earth, but we're also a multi-layered spirit that comes from many experiences, from many lifetimes. We are closer to death than we think. All it takes is for our heart to stop. Death is not separate from life. That is just my opinion. I have heard of Eastern monks that can train their bodies through meditation to die for a short time. People that have had near-death experiences have also witnessed this. And there are many documented cases of what they experienced in death for the short period that their heart stopped. At 25, I bought an old farm in New England and spent nearly 30 years of my life there. It was in the hills of western Massachusetts, and my life forever changed from that point on. I started a bed and breakfast and then moved into farming, boarding horses, and raising sheep. I grew my own food for the winters and lived as a pioneer off the land. This is a whole book in itself. From a surfer kid that grew up in Los Angeles in the city to a farmer in the rural mountains of New England. This is like a 4-part series on TV. It changed my life. Although being a sensitive person, I think the extreme silence of the property and living a 24-hour meditation of clearing land, building barns, and long evenings in my workshop, building furniture, affected me negatively. My anxiety went through the roof. I was so sensitive, I had conversations with the old spirits that once lived on my land. I even started to look like the old caretakers from the 1800s. I had dealt with my own past life experiences throughout my whole life, and that rural life intensified it. I became very sick looking. I was not myself. At my bed and breakfast, I would do little predictions and readings for my customers. When they would return, they would tell me what I told them came true. It wasn't until I gave one of my customers a prediction that turned out to be 9/11. And it was after that, and I'm typing this now, that I really fell apart. I just had to I did a small error there in the sentence. I knew something was not right with me. I was scared, and I didn't know why I had these visions. So I sought the help from a psychic who lived in the Midwest. This was before the internet, and I saw a little classified ad in the back of a magazine. She was an older woman who ran a bookshop and lived a low-key, married life in a small town. She wasn't a celebrity psychic or famous in any way. She was exactly the person I needed to speak to, and we've spent many months communicating. She was vital to helping me understand what I was going through and how to control my abilities. She also told me my psychic abilities were very high. Another mistake I made. Okay. Off the chart. I had an unusually high perception and vision. I could walk into someone's house visually that lived thousands of miles away and see what kind of furniture they had and what kind of spirits that lived there in the past. My vision was so powerful that it affected me physically. It would affect my stomach and make me dizzy. My vertigo eventually became so bad I had to go through treatment for it. When I was in the presence of a spirit, the room would spin. By the way, I still suffer with this vertigo condition today, but not as bad. I would also get terrible heart palpitations. Coming into my psychic abilities was not fun and in no way helped my life. I had to learn how to control it, and today I'm much more equipped to handle it. I average about 24 hours worth of reading time a month. I can't handle many more hours than that, or it will start to wear out. I didn't consider psychic work as a profession for about 10 years. I was in my later 30s that I would help people in this work, and it became so impactful that I would save lives. I said to myself, there's no way I can't do this. I found missing pets and solved missing person cases for the public. I knew I had a deep understanding of animals, and I felt I could be effective in helping them in every way. From reading their health to finding ones that were missing. It became a whole specialty to what I do now. I can honestly say that I have returned hundreds of missing pets to their owners. Dogs, cats, horses, and even turtles. I even had someone with a missing cockroach. No kidding. Although my work went far beyond missing pets, and I solved my first missing person case in Springfield, Massachusetts early on. I went on to solving criminal cases, suicides, murders, and so on. I kept my job as a contractor until I turned about 49. My psychic work became so busy I did it full time. I wasn't comfortable for a long time being called a psychic. I was embarrassed. And I didn't know what people would think of me. I didn't tell my parents till later on. I just told them I worked with pets to train them. Although it didn't surprise my family or even my childhood friends when I told them. I was in shock. I suppose they always knew something was different about me. My mother, who I love dearly, made me laugh when she witnessed my work for the first time. She looked at me like, what went wrong with his DNA? My parents still live in California. They also come out and told me some psychic experiences they have had in their life. I found out my grandfather was also very psychic. My sister has also had a lot of experiences. I knew both of my grandmothers were highly intuitive. My grandmother on my mom's side would often talk to me after her death many years ago. And I'm going to go on to this next part here. I'm kind of going in a row. Hopefully I'm not boring everybody out there. I'm sorry for the interruptions. Anyway, this is real life. The dead are as real to me as the living. They are right here in front of us, yet others don't see them. They speak through me, and I interact with them. Sometimes in a reading, they are interested in me and what I do. Some spirits have even told me they don't believe in psychics or mediums. I found that pretty funny. This is true, actually. Death does not give us all the answers. It's like a wormhole inside of our time and space. I often compare the afterlife like the ocean. Some spirits are right on the surface, ready to communicate with us loud and clear, and some are down in the deep water. Some spirits just never come through to me. It isn't anything bad, they are just in a higher dimension, I feel. The average person has trouble with death. So do I. Just because I am a psychic doesn't mean I have different feelings. Right now, I'm at a time where my family's getting older, and they won't be around anymore. It bothers me. Although I know they aren't gone, I just can't call them on the phone and ask how they are doing. I will miss them. That goes for all the animals I have lost too. I have lost so many because I had a farm. Animals are in the spirit world too. I remember a reading where I told the client that her horse had died and that he was buried near her pasture gate. She said that was true. The animals are there with you, and they will send you signs. If you were telling me about a friend of yours who was traveling on a vacation, all of a sudden I start seeing where that friend is. Such as an upper floor in a hotel, the smell of the air, the type of trees outside, the type of clothing that is worn. If I focus a little more, I will see how she feels, whether she is tired or stressed, maybe has some money issues, who she is staying with, etc. This is the way I experience things naturally. Most people don't do this, but I do. I can't help it. Of course, when I go to the market or a restaurant, I don't always use my abilities. I would rather concentrate what I am going to eat. I go into neutral, and my mind just relaxes and doesn't do my work. Although if I was asked a question that you want answered psychically, I will focus. When I'm working on a detective case, I have trained my ability to find an angle into the situation that will help me see more clearly. For example, I worked on a case recently for some missing jewelry. First of all, I use a process of elimination to rule out places where I don't think the jewelry will be, rather than jumping right into where it will be. You see, information can come very quickly to a psychic, but I want to slow the flow of information down. That way it gives me more options and more angles to use. The other angle I used on the case was this woman's husband and child, seeing through their eyes and watching to see if they might have misplaced the jewelry in the house. Will it be in the house, I ask myself? I made a mistake here. Just give me a sec. Okay. I will often get a yes or no. This taps into some kind of predictive phenomena, a kind of vacuum of time. That gives me an overall answer. Then I detect the spirit of a woman in the house. I asked my client if her mother passed, and she said yes. She also said the jewelry contained her mother's necklaces. So now my angle is to communicate with the mom. Just because she is deceased doesn't mean necessarily she knows where the necklaces are. Also, during the beginning of the reading, as I am seeing things, I ask for confirmation from the client that I am seeing the room and furniture correctly. I want to make sure that I'm seeing an upstairs and downstairs to the house as well. Everything matters to me in one reading. I must give details, and of course, I can't always get the details I want from certain clients. This is a reality that I live with. Another practice I do is to step back from the case and then try again. If I get feedback from the client and she says she looked in all the places I said and didn't find the jewelry, it is at least confirmation to me. I don't care if I'm right or wrong. I need confirmation to move forward and try some more angles into finding the jewelry. It's pretty amazing to people because they don't understand how much work I'm putting into one situation. It goes back to me being a farmer and carpenter. There's no reprieve unless the job is done. This is something ingrained in me from working for years as a builder and as a farmer who worked with animals. All of these years, I always fed the animals before myself and always did the chores before I did something for pleasure. I naturally do this in psychic work. I am sure you are asking yourself whether I actually found the jewelry on that case. The answer is I identified some linen and a metal object in a closet that turned out to be some other family jewelry in a sack, but not the items the client was looking for. That can happen. I have found missing pets that look exactly like the missing pets a client is looking for, but the wrong ones. The color and breed is right, but it isn't their pet. I will talk more about that in another conversation. And I'm going to maybe skip over one section here. I was working on a missing cat case not too long ago. I spoke to the owner and I asked for basic information. A photo of the pet, the age, when it went missing, and the owner's physical address. I first focus on what I see. Then I used a map to see if it matches up to what I see, such as the letter C for a road or a number 2 for a highway number. Usually I will get a direction on the map, but I know that doesn't always work. I always tell my clients that I track movement. I don't personally do a reading for the pet or read them psychologically. I will see injuries or whether they are wet from the rain. I will know what the pet has eaten. I will hear water like a river or cars on a highway. I will see street lamps through their eyes or smell food from a local restaurant. In that case, I will try to identify what kind of restaurant it is, or even the name. That has actually happened many times. In tracking an animal that is moving, I will assume it is on the run. An animal that isn't might be resting or could be in someone's house. I will often see people in that case. On one missing cat case that I found, I even told the owner what kind of career that neighbor had and identified a Cadillac Escalade in her driveway. Actually, I identified the color as well. It can be that accurate at times. On this missing cat I was first talking about, I was drawn to the street right down her road and completely stopped. I said it ended right there. An eyewitness on that road said a woman had run over the cat with her car. Then I investigated the client's neighbor who had made many threats to my client about her cat going on her property. It was her. And the police were brought in to prosecute her because she intentionally ran the cat over. Although this is a very sad example of some of my work, closure was found. After that, I worked on other cases for that client and her family. Off the record, off the book, that was a very sad story, but it was a true story. It happened in North Carolina. Very mean person who was threatening this lady's cats, but that's kind of an example of psychic work where I'm actually following the direction of the cat and it stops there, and there's a reason why. I don't always know the reason, but I knew at that point the cat wasn't on the run and the cat wasn't taken in by somebody. I will go on to my next here. A good example showing what works for me and what doesn't work for me was a missing man case in my state of Virginia. He was an elderly man with Alzheimer's disease. These clients actually called me, and I immediately called them back. The man wandered from his home and got lost. Police were working on this as well. So I looked at my map and gave him a direction. But I actually got the wrong direction according to the details I gave him. So sometimes I can be wrong about the direction on the map, and I keep that in the back of my mind. I described a school. They asked what kind, and I said quite large, like a high school. I told them I also saw a car mechanic business nearby. I know that I was also near a highway. But the map showed me the wrong direction. The biggest clue I gave him was a road that was named after a tree. I didn't know what kind of tree. Well, they passed by the school, they made a turn, then found the mechanic's shop near the highway, and found the man. He was directly across from Oak Street. He was tired and thirsty, but okay. People in spirit can often help me on cases and sometimes not. I don't know the reason why, but they don't know everything just because they are in spirit. Sometimes they will even argue with me, and it is hilarious. I will say something, and the spirit says, "Todd, you were definitely wrong about that." I even had some spirits tell me they don't believe in psychics. Now that is a shocker. People do not change on the other side the way we think they do. By the way, I did repeat a sentence here. The way you are in this physical life is the way you go out. I first discovered my abilities around the time my grandmother passed. She was a bold woman with a loud voice that carried. You could hear her all the way across the restaurant. When she died, I was very sad. I loved her so much, and I was in a very high anxiety part of my life in my 30s. I remember how nervous I was to fly in a plane to see her funeral. I didn't like flying. I was speaking to my grandmother in spirit, and she told me she would help me on my journey. So I remember changing planes at one stop and boarded a very large empty plane. I was sitting alone next to the window, and a man said hello to me. He was so nice, and there was something about him that comforted me. So he asked me to sit with him, and I told him I was nervous. There was just something otherworldly about him, and we flew all the way to our destination, and I was very grateful to him. He gave me his address, and I actually wrote to him and thanked him. This was before email. When he left the airport, I saw him get into a limousine and drove away. I realized at that point he was somebody very important. To make a long story short, I arrived back to my farm in Massachusetts. I went into my old clawfoot bathtub, as I usually did in the evening. And then my grandmother started talking to me. I was so excited. I asked her questions and she gave me answers. Some of the answers surprised me, but I could hear her voice and I knew it was her. I do truly believe she gave me my mediumship abilities or brought them out. I used to ask her questions in some of my readings for clients, and she was always correct. On the other hand, my grandfather that died, I was very close to. He was really like my father figure growing up, but I never hear from him. This is the way connecting with spirits go. Anyway, these are some of the passages from my book. It's going to be, I've realized, it's going to be a lot of work. The more I talk about some of these cases and some of these time periods and what something means and what something doesn't mean in psychic work, I find myself going to the past, and there's just a lot of stuff I did. A lot of readings, a lot of cases, a lot of examples of what psychic work is and what it isn't. So if it's okay with you, I wouldn't mind actually doing another chapter or more paragraphs on the book. And I think it will be, I would love your feedback on it. That's very important to me. And excuse me for shifting around and moving, but I'm actually reading this off of my laptop computer as I'm on a desktop computer doing this show. So it's a little complicated. I'm scrolling through one. I scroll through one mouse, and the mouse isn't controlling it. Like, oh, well, you're not doing the one for the laptop computer. Duh. Anyway. So it was nice talking to you all. And I'm going to leave this episode now. But I'd love to hear what you think about it so far, and even any advice or input. I think I'm going to really talk about the work. But I know that I've had quite an interesting life, and it's a part of my work. It's part of how I see things, and it's part of why I became what I became. And blows me away at how busy it's become. But anyway, if I don't speak to you before then, I wish you a happy Thanksgiving. And remember, we always have something to be thankful for. Right now, it's a hard time I'm going through one of those life phases where, I have a father who is sick, who's not doing well. And I've heard of a lot of people recently who are not well. And when I talk about the 2024 predictions some more, we will talk about what I'm witnessing among clients and people and the amount of deaths that are going on. In fact, many doctors have actually been talking about this, something the mainstream media seems to keep quiet. Anyway, I wish you all well, and I will talk to you soon.